We always told people that 97% goes straight to the charity and then 3% goes towards like marketing and advertising. But it makes no sense that in my head, I never really knew the exact numbers. If we're getting paid $25 per sign up or like $20 per sign up, something like that, different for each amount they sign up for. But if we're being paid that much per sign up, how is 97% going to the charity and we're only getting 3%?
Yeah.
So it just felt so wrong. So like the math just didn't add up to me.
Okay, Courtney, you worked for a branch of Credico called Sparks, and in my research, I've found two different Sparks. There's Sparks Worldwide and Sparks Global, both out of Savannah. I don't know if these are the same company, if they're subsidiaries, sister offices, whatever, but this place is called Sparks, and you worked specifically for Sparks Global. Mm-hmm. And being a Credico office, as I've been learning recently, you collected money for charities.
Yeah.
And in your message to us, you said that you worked for Sparks under Credico, although when you first started working there, you did not know it was Credico, which I think nearly everybody has gone through that, whether it's Credico, Sidcor, Smart Circle, whichever. You start working for these companies and they never mention those companies at all. Mm-hmm. So when did you find out you were working for Credico?
So it was probably after like the first month, and like in December they had this big gala kind of thing, award ceremony and everything, and my leader went, assistant manager went, took some people with them, and he was posting pictures, and I noticed the background said Credico all over. You know, we do photo ops and stuff. It's like they plaster that everywhere, and he had an award. He was like I think it was 25 award or 2020 award, and it's like Credico, and I was like, that's weird. So I kind of started Googling. That's when I found all this information.
Yeah, I noticed those same pictures. It's interesting you mentioned that, because as I was looking up Sparks, there are a couple pictures on the website, on the Facebook page. One I found was in the office, and it might be hard to see if you're not looking for it, but there's two big signs in the back. One that says Law of Averages, and the other one says 5 Steps, which are clear giveaways that you're in one of these cult companies. But then the other one, the one you mentioned, there was a big photo op there. And I did notice the Credico banner in the back too, which I've noticed some companies, when they post photos like that, they will try to blur out the name. Like you can do some research and you'll see people with like the Smart Circle awards, but Smart Circle will be blurred out. And, you know, if you're running a legitimate company, I'm not sure why you would do that, but, you know, that's pretty good evidence that shows you these people are scamming you. But anyway, you said, you told us that you were, and these are your words, I was smitten with the idea of making so much money, more than a fresh college graduate could have thought so soon. And after working for $9 an hour as a manager, I thought this would be the perfect change. So just like most people, they dangled that carrot in front of you that if you work really hard for a year, you'll be making however much money. So what did they tell you that you were going to be making?
So in my first interview, when they took us off, which I thought was really weird, they took us off to a Starbucks, literally like a block down the road, and we sat down, had our little meeting there. It was like 3 of us and then 2 leaders. They gave us the sheet of paper that had the 4 different the 4 different like levels you could be at, and they broke it down saying like you could start off making anywhere between $400 to like $550 a week. And that's about as much as I was making in like 2 weeks at my old job. So I was like, man, I can be making double now. And they're like, yeah, you can make even more than that if you work hard. And then in just a matter of 5 weeks, you can go up to $1,000 a week. So.
Yeah, I think that shines more negative light on other companies that expect you to work for $9 an hour as a manager. I think if anyone's looking for another argument that we need a federal $15 minimum wage, think about how much good that would do to getting rid of all of these scam cult companies, because they're never going to pay $15 an hour for anybody. So that obviously appealed to you. Did you ever make anything close to what they said you were going to make?
I for several weeks, almost every single week, I was barely making $100 a week. I think my last week there before I just quit made the most sales personally, and I think I made just under $200. And I mean, I was 2.5 months of working. I could barely make that much, and I was like, no. I drained my savings, my checking. I'm trying to pay for a wedding, and that was just not happening. No.
So how did you justify staying if the pay was so poor? But I think, was it just that carrot that they kept dangling in front of you?
Yeah, they just kept promising, like, you just got to work harder. You just have to improve on these systems. You just have to keep working at your law averages. They would check our numbers every day and be like, oh, you're only stopping like 20 people, but you're out in the field for like 5 hours. You need to be stopping like 70 people if you want to hit your law of averages. So like, okay, I just got to talk to more people, get more sales. And yeah, it just wasn't happening for me. I was just struggling so hard. I'm too empathetic with people. Like, you give me a no, I understand. You have a great day.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people I've talked to, especially on the charity campaigns, are pretty much the most successful people are the most ruthless people. They will not take no, and they don't care what your situation is. They expect you to pony up, and it can be especially difficult because you're demanding monthly donations, and that brings us to the whole charity scam. You said that your campaign was well known for fundraising for the Humane Society of the United States, the HSUS, which is a very well-known, very credible charity. Did you ever have any contact with anyone from that organization?
I never had any contact with anybody that I knew from it, so we were always given magazines, and I'd always flip through them and look to see, who the president was of it, and all the different board members. I remember stopping one person, and he mentioned how he was on like the local branch of the United States, of the Humane Society of the United States. But I mean, that conversation was very short. And it was like, oh, he's already helped out. Don't want to mess with him anymore. Don't want to waste time. But no, and they always terrified us, saying that we had to always look professional, dress professional, always make sure we were saying the right stuff in the field, because there could be any time when somebody from the brand could, be testing us or report us if we're not being professional. But I've never met anybody.
So how did you collect money? Were you situated did you go door to door on the streets, like in shopping malls? Like what was your territory like?
So we were all over essentially Eastern Georgia, mostly outside of like Dollar Generals, Ollie's. We had 2 malls that we were in. So we were in the Mall of Savannah, and we were in the Ogeechee Mall. And then just before I left, we got territory in the Augusta Mall. But we were mostly outside of like Dollar Generals, dollar stores, stuff like that, which I thought was really weird. I'm like, you think people shopping at dollar stores, they only have the money to give like $30, $40 a month.
Yeah, that does make a lot of logical sense. But in the same vein, I mean, something I've learned from undergoing this project for over 2 years now is that these companies will take advantage of people who are in a like poor individuals, like not a great situation. I mean, that's their whole shtick is the jobs, the opportunities they're providing. They're appealing to people that have nothing, that are desperate, that have no options. So they kind of, they may feel like, well, I mean, if we camp out in front of these stores where less fortunate people, lower class people, poorer people shop, maybe we can trick them into donating something. That's just my opinion based on what I've learned. And then you continued that and these are your words again, I feel ashamed for scamming so many wonderful and innocent people into donating on a monthly basis. So why did you use that word scamming?
Because it really felt like we were manipulating people. It really felt like we were tugging on heartstrings. We were really using their emotions against them. It felt so bad when I would be hearing their personal stories. I always think about this one very sweet lady. She didn't have a job. She had a a very abusive husband that we witnessed kind of firsthand. Like, he was very aggressive with her. And, you know, she's like, I really just don't have money, but I really want to help out. And we're like, no, it's okay. Like, we understand, you know, you don't meet our qualifications, so we didn't want to continue wasting time with her. But we ended up seeing her again that next week. We happened to be at the same location again, and she saw us again. And she said she finally managed to scrounge up enough money and was trying to give us cash. And I'm like, well, we can't take cash, you know, we're on the streets, you know, there's some laws against that. So we had did everything electronically, but it just felt, and I could never guarantee, we always told people that 97% goes straight to the charity and then 3% goes towards like marketing and advertising. But it makes no sense that, in my head, I never really knew the exact numbers. If we're getting paid $25 per sign up, or like $20 per sign up, something like that, different for each amount they sign up for. But if we're being paid that much per sign up, how is 97% going to the charity and we're only getting 3%?
Yeah.
So it just felt so wrong. So like the math just didn't add up to me.
Yeah. Yeah, the math doesn't make any sense to me. You might be like the third or fourth person I've talked to who've worked the charity scam, and I always ask everyone about the numbers because it doesn't make sense. I wonder if the Humane Society or any of these charities sees any of this money, because if you really think about all the layers of the pyramid of a Credico or a Smart Circle or a Sidcor, you as a rep would have to make money. Your owner has to make a cut of that money. Credico has to make some money somewhere. So what's left for the charity, if anything? You know, it doesn't make any sense. And that's something that I wish, and maybe it's a gullibility thing too. You know, if you can come up with a pitch that is so full of emotionally charged language, like any charity pitch is going to be filled with emotionally charged language, but if it's coming straight from the charity, like if you have a Humane Society ad coming on the television, that's going to be filled with the same very emotionally charged language, imagery, and all that sort of thing. But you know that money is going directly to that organization. Now, what they do with it, that's a whole nother story, right? Like with Goodwill, we know Goodwill is a for-profit. They're not really, or not a for-profit, but we know that most of what Goodwill brings in doesn't go back out to those they're helping. They have salaried people on their staff. But that's another question. But with these third parties like Credico companies asking for these donations, does any of the money go to these organizations? And I would be hard pressed to say that it does. So that's why I would always tell people, if someone comes up to you asking for donations, ask them a lot of questions, ask them for some history on their company. How do they get paid? Because you know they're not volunteers. And if you do want to make a charitable donation, go directly to that organization. Go to hsus.org instead of giving, especially the scammy sound of giving someone that you met in front of a store your debit card information. It doesn't make any sense to me. But again, that might be one of the reasons why they go to these lower income areas, is they feel they can fool more people, less educated people.
We were kicked out of a few different locations because of taking card information on our little tablet. So there was a PetSmart in Augusta that they saw us out there that second week when we were on a business trip, and we were like, no, y'all can't be out here. Y'all are taking card information. That's horrible. So we're like, okay, let's hop to a new location.
Yeah. Did you have any permits for anything, or was that never discussed?
And so it was one of those things. It would be like a sentence in a conversation kind of thing. Nothing ever really focused on. I personally never saw them. Anytime I was with a leader and we were scouting out new locations, they'd be like, yeah, we've already sent over the information, or we have the paperwork on our phone, like I have like a screenshot or something. I never personally saw it. I never personally read over it or anything. And when I first started working there and asked for that, they said, wait till you're a leader. A lot of questions that I wanted to know about for legitimacy stuff, they'd be like, that's a conversation when you become a leader. Or like, okay, but I kind of want to know now so I know I'm not in the wrong.
Yeah, they're masters of deflection. They don't want to answer any questions, because once you get to leadership, then maybe you're more indoctrinated, right? because you've reached that next level. You've been rewarded. You've gotten that status. You've gotten the cheers and the high fives and all that sort of thing. So now you've bought in that next level up. So now because what might sound kind of scammy, kind of weird to an entry level rep, now that you're a leader and you've seen it and you've been rewarded for your work, it's kind of like, well, maybe I'm more accepting of it, even if it still doesn't make any sense to me. And that was one of the things I was going to ask you too, was, were there any, like, because obviously you're going for these monthly donations where you can just get people's debit cards and just remove it on the monthly. Did you ever get anybody that came back to you and said, like, I never got anything, or is my money helping anybody? Or did you ever get any pushback from someone who did give a donation to you?
So I actually did see some of my personal donors. I'm always really bad about remembering faces and names and stuff like that. But there have been instances where I was in the same location for like a whole week in a row, and it would leave there, and then next month I'd be back and be like, "Oh, you guys! Oh my gosh, I got my package. I got my T-shirt, my magazine. Stuff that we do promise them and that they do get." And they'd be so excited about it. And they'd be happy, but they never question where their money goes, because for them, they already know. They already know that it's going to the charity, well, for all they know.
Right.
So they never question that, but they get so excited when they get a T-shirt and a magazine. I'm like, that's great. So.
I mean, I guess that does add some type of legitimacy to it, but still, I personally, and I just might be overly critical or cynical. If I'm giving money to somebody, I want to know where that money goes. So
yeah, we had pamphlets that showed, like, had a pie chart. I mean, this stuff's all easily manufactured and stuff. Had a pie chart that said, oh, this much goes towards marketing, this much goes towards actually rescuing the animals, that kind of stuff. So we had these little pamphlets, but we only gave them. We were very strict. We only gave those pamphlets, the T-shirts and stuff, to people who donated. Mm-hmm. So if people were like, oh, do you have a takeaway? So, like, I'm not interested in donating right now. They were like, sorry, these are only for our donors.
Those pamphlets, do you know, were those printed by HSUS?
I have no clue. I know we had, like, I know they were very small amounts. Like, we would have, like, a little, like, plastic wrap about, like, this much. It'd be 2 stacks about that high. They're really tiny little pamphlets. Yeah. But I never knew who they were printed by or anything. I just know we would get them. The T-shirts, we would get, like, boxes of them. But once they're out, they're out. We'd have to wait, like, several months to get more of them.
I mean, I know that these charities, these nonprofits, they're always struggling for money, and I mean, maybe imploring the work of a third party, paying that third party a certain amount to get donations might offset the cost in some way. But it's important for anyone watching these videos. I don't want to knock HSUS or Plan International or any of these other charities that we've highlighted in these videos, because these are legitimate charities. My family has donated to HSUS in the past, and but again, like I said before, if you want to make a donation, do it directly through the charity. You don't need to go through a third party, because every time you go through a third party, it's going to cost more. Then the money's not going to you're not going to help any animals or any children by going through a third party. Yeah. You went on in your message to talk a little bit more about your experience in this whole thing. You said, quote, "The place drained me of money between driving up to 5 hours every day, eating fast food every day, and paying for others." So was that your daily commute?
So in Statesboro to Savannah is 1 hour. Uh-huh. So I'd wake up at like 7 a.m., drive to Savannah so I could be there for the morning meeting. And then a lot of them didn't have cars, which I found to be very odd. I was like, how can y'all have a job like where you do a lot of traveling and not have cars? Yeah. So they would rely on my car a lot of times. I was a leader, and we would drive out to all these different places that could be anywhere upwards of like 15 minutes to, I think the farthest I've ever drawn outside of a business trip was an hour and a half, and then have to drive an hour and a half back to the office, deposit our stuff, and then drive an hour back home. So my work day was from 7 a.m. to, I think the latest I'd get home would be 9 p.m. sometimes 10 p.m. So my whole day would be working. I've never seen anybody.
Yeah. And all that driving too.
Just
Is
killing on
insane.
gas.
And yeah, I can imagine. But then it's strange too, because I know at least Smart Circle companies, they always used to ask you if you had reliable transport. And if you didn't have a car, there'd be almost no way you were going to get hired for this thing. So I don't know, maybe Credico is different, or maybe they're just more desperate to have
They
people
hire
stay.
everybody.
Yeah, they
even
do.
told us they hire everybody that applies. Even like one of the requirements is make sure you're in business professional.
Yeah.
And my last week or two there's so many people coming in with like jeans and tennis shoes and like holes and stuff. I'm like, I'm here dressed in a nice business suit and heels every day for freaking hours and hours, and you're letting people in sneakers and jeans and t-shirts.
Yeah. This is a question I always have for anybody I talk to, but especially with Credico, because the math still doesn't make any sense. But you discovered that all the top earners in your office, the owner, the assistant manager, and about 5 leaders all live together in the same townhouse. So first, how did you learn that? And what did you think when you learned that?
So the first time I kind of noticed something about that was kind of fishy was I was picking up one of the leaders who didn't have a car. Or she had to grab something from there. She had a bunch of stuffed animals that we would sit out on our table to try to attract people. So we had to drive from the office to the house and pick them up real quick. And I noticed there were some people that didn't show up in the office today that were in there. And then several weeks later, it was like late at night, and I was dropping off my personal leader, Mercedes, because her car battery died. And it was like 11 o'clock at night, and we couldn't get it fixed at the time. So I dropped her off, and my manager, the owner, was walking out in like boxers and a t-shirt. I'm like, okay, so that's the one leader that doesn't have a car, my leader, my owner is all living in there. And then I also find out through conversations throughout the 2.5 months I'm working there that another leader and another leader and another leader, just all these people living in such a small like townhouse. I was like, there's no way you'll all live together if you're making this much money. Oh my gosh. Because my leader, she was always one of the top earners of the whole charity situation. Like we would have a bulletin board that posted out every week. And her team, even though she struggled keeping a team, she was always right there within top 10 people of earners. I was like, there's no way if you're making all this money, you're living in a house with all these people. You can afford your own place. Why?
Yeah, and forget the leaders, because I know sometimes, having gone through the field, I wasn't doing the charity scam, but I was still through the field that, sometimes it can be a little difficult to make money. But as an owner, if you're supposedly making 6 figures and an assistant manager, you're supposedly making at least $1,000 a week. Why are you living in a little townhouse with what you said, 5 or 6 other people? It doesn't make any sense. It goes directly in contrast to what this opportunity tells you, that when you make it to owner, you have all this free time, you have all this money, you have all this family time, and you said all these people don't have cars too. It's the same thing I hear every time I interview somebody, that these owners, assistant managers, all the way down to leaders, they give off this picture of success, but they have nothing. They have absolutely nothing, and they're working toward nothing. And it's sad that they've been brainwashed to think that, well, if I live with 7 people, then one day I'm going to have all of this. But it's just never going to happen. Getting to kind of how you got out of this whole thing, you were on multiple business trips. So I'm curious, where did they send you for business trips? Were these still in Georgia, or did they send you everywhere?
So all the trips that I personally went on have been in Georgia. I've been to Augusta 2 or 3 times, and I've been to Atlanta once. The Atlanta wasn't so much of a business trip. It was more of that's when the assistant manager was getting promoted, his official promotion to assistant manager. So a lot of the people from the office went up there, and this was literally like my first week there. So my first weekend, we're like, hey, we're going up to Atlanta. Want to come? Sure, sounds fun. I was thinking it was going to be a big party. It's going to be fun. We're going to celebrate. Out of the 3 days we were there, we worked every single day. So we had the meeting, the celebration in the morning, and then we went out in the field. And the next day, so it was like a Saturday, went out in the field, walked around parks and stuff in Atlanta, which was very strange for me when I'm used to being outside stores and you're walking around talking to people.
Mhm.
And then that Sunday we drove back to Savannah. I was like, I thought this was supposed to be fun. We were working.
Yeah.
But I got to meet the top, what they call him. He was like the district regional something. I can't remember what he was. His name was James Sagar. He was a big deal, man. He was a big deal. Everybody respected the hell out of him, and talked about his real nice house and custom blazer and all this stuff. I'm like, man, I want to be him one day.
Mhm.
Like he's the one making money.
Maybe. We don't know for sure. Now, you had talked about the last few road trips that you went on. You pretty much bought everybody's food. You bought gas that you were never compensated for, even though you said that you were going to be. And then you said halfway through the trip, you discovered the fantastic website Devilcorp and read the entire thing that night while you were breaking down your day, which is phenomenal. It's probably the best day breakdown ever. But that website doesn't just fall into your lap. You had to have been looking for something, right? Like, what made you come across that Devilcorp website?
So I was actually scrolling around on Facebook on one of the very rare instances when I had any free time, because you really have no free time in this kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So scrolling through Facebook, and someone commented on like a friend's post, a group link called "Sounds like an MLM, but okay." I was like, I started kind of getting suspicious. So I tapped on it, joined the group, and at that time, Devilcorp was being posted like frequently. So a lot of people apparently related to. So I was like, just out of curiosity, tapped on it, and I started reading like the very first page. I started talking about the juice, join us in creating excitement, and all these other taglines, and everything just sounded almost exactly what I was going through. And I was like, oh my God. It was a realization. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was getting so much stress from my fiance because I was never seeing him, and I live with him, and everything was just coming together. I'm like, I need out as soon as possible. But I still was in the middle of my road trip.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't just leave because I was in Atlanta, or I was in Augusta, and I drove half the people there.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people in the cult, when they find Devilcorp or when they find the Slave Circle or any of these interviews, they will read it or watch it and be like, oh, these people are just angry failures who couldn't make it. Why didn't you have that reaction?
I think because I was already having a lot of realizations. Like I said, my fiance and I we don't really have a lot of arguments, but we were having a lot of pushback because I was never seeing him, and he was kind of getting really upset with me. And I was telling my friends about my kind of job, but I was like, yeah, there's a lot of hush hush with it. And they're like, that's not right for a kind of job. And I wasn't making a lot of money. I was making barely $100 a week. And I was like, I can't be proud of this job anymore if I'm not making money, if I can't support myself. I'm getting so much outward aggression and stuff. I was like, I got so sick from doing it. I literally became sick. Like I started really getting physically sick, having to go out to the field. My last few days of my business trip, it started off fake being sick because I just couldn't go out there and scam the people anymore, to I was physically sick. I could barely get out of bed those last few days. Like I said, I have all the paperwork, all the notes that they forced us to write. Like it was ridiculous and crazy how we always had to have a pen and paper with us. Even though we already knew the stuff by heart, we still had to sit down and write it down. Morning meeting, 3 hours of writing down the same stuff every single day. The 5 steps to a conversation, the 6 whatever, fig juice, fear of loss, urgency, all that stuff, C factors. Like I knew that stuff by heart after my second week. I was really good at memorizing stuff, but we still had to write it down. We still had to, it just wasted so much paper in my mind. I'm like, I already know this stuff. Why do I still have to write it? Why do I still have to make all these notes and break down my days? And just it's a really draining process being in this kind of this cult. I don't feel ashamed calling it a cult because it is. They make you drink the juice and think everything's great until they drain you of every penny you have. And then you struggle coming back. I went back to my $9 an hour job because I needed something and they were willing to take me back. I'm loving it right now with everything going on. And, you know, I appreciate being able to easily get back into a job right before a pandemic.
For sure. Yeah.
So.
And everything you mentioned about the repetitive notes and all that, it's a disciplinary tactic. You know, they do it so that they can control your behavior. They can control your behavior to make you do this over and over and over and over again. And they can control your thoughts too, because they're just repeating the same narrow window of options, the same systems, the same theories, the same BS over and over and over again, so that your frame of reference is limited only to those things. And like you mentioned earlier, when I asked you about how you came across Devilcorp, you said, I finally had some time. That's another technique they use. You know, they'll bring in people to make you drive an hour a day each way. They'll have atmosphere. You work the whole day. Some people have to go back to the office again, break down your day. You don't have time to really think. You're just on autopilot. And then the next day you wake up, you do it all over again. You really don't have time or energy to think critically about what you're doing. And anybody who's worked for these companies and has gotten out and realized that, whether it's Credico, it's Sidcor, it's Smart Circle, it's Appco, it's Cobra Group, whatever sham name you want to call it, they're going to tell you the same thing, is that once they actually had either a moment to think, or they had time to realize what it was and to reflect on what they were doing, they finally realized everything didn't make sense, and they were able to see things a little bit differently, which is unfortunate that has to happen, but it does.
The days are just so long, and I think once they started talking about like phone calls, oh my God, there's so many phone calls. We had to be part of a Saturday. It was Monday through Saturday, and Saturday we'd meet up for breakfast. We'd have a charity phone call, so that the top 5 to 7 to 8 to 9 to eventually 10 earners of the charity would, you know, give what worked for them. And then right before I left, they started doing, we had goals. We had to call in our goals. And then on Sundays was like my day off, where I could chill, I could relax, I could de-stress from everything, I could breathe without thinking of the steps and the pitch and all this stuff. And then they're like, let's hop on a phone call. Let's start networking. Oh my gosh, you're not networking enough if you don't have 5 phone calls every single day. I'm like, I can't. I need to breathe. I need to step away. And I was just like, I don't have my Sundays to myself anymore. No, I'm done. I stopped answering my leader's phone call. I stopped answering her texts. I left the group. I didn't show up that last Monday after my last business trip. I was like, I'm just done. I like fell off the face of the earth, and then I was like, okay, I still have to go in and like formally quit, because I felt like that was respectful. But I was like, y'all are taking up 24/7 of my day, and I can't do that. Yep. So too many resources, too much time for little to no money.
We're glad you made it out before too long. You are kind of another example of the epitome, the target audience of these scams. You are a young fresh college graduate looking for success, you know, looking for something where you can support your family, you can pay for your wedding, and you can make a comfortable life for yourself. And as we know, it's more and more difficult for anyone in their 20s to be successful these days, because the cards are so stacked against pretty much everybody in that generation. Is there anything, do you think, that you could have seen, or for anyone who comes across these videos or Devilcorp and is applying for jobs, is there anything you think they can look up or ask to maybe prevent themselves from getting involved in this? Is there anything that you think you could have done to prevent even though it was only a couple months, but to have prevented yourself from getting involved in Credico?
So I think a lot of the biggest advice would really be just trust your family and friends when they tell you like this sounds fishy, because I was explaining the job to my parents one night at dinner and I was like, and they told me like this sounds like a pyramid scheme, like it sounds too good to be true, and I should have known from that point to trust my parents. They would know, especially because my mom's sister was really big into Mary Kay, and like that's a really big pyramid scheme that people don't realize.
Yeah.
I should have known from that point. There were so many red flags, but I was so optimistic, I guess kind of greedy and wanting more money. I was ignoring the red flags. So just pay attention to the red flags that are there for you. If you try to look up a website and you don't get anything set in stone, that's a red flag. If you're asking questions and they're deflecting them, that's a red flag. If they're so charismatic that you can't think of anything to ask them, that's probably a red flag. Like if they're just all smiles and joy and excitement, and if you go into an office and there's thumping music right on the other side of the wall, that's probably a red flag. Because my first instance going in for an interview, that music was loud. It was like some aggressive rap. I'm like, this doesn't seem very business professional.
Yeah. If you're really paying attention, the red flags are there and they're numerous. But I also know that it's a lot easier to not pay attention to them if you are desperate, or if you are being advertised this opportunity of a lot of income, a lot of freedom. It's easier to just go with it because maybe it's true. Maybe it is true, and you don't find out until much later that it's not.